Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Bill Flynn, who is an author and founder of the Catalyst Growth Advisors. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
Hey, so I want to hear a little bit about your background and what you learned from that was really, pun intended, the catalyst for you to start Catalyst Growth Advisors, because I know there's always a story that, like when I talk to a chiropractor, hey, when I was a kid, I had this accident and this chiropractor really just changed my life, so I wanted to be one. What was your catalyst moment?
Sure. My origin story is, so I'm a Boston guy, got into startups in the early 90s. I ended up doing 10 of them.
Wow. Over
that period of time, all in high tech, so I've got a lot of MIT, Harvard guys that I worked with over the years, Carnegie Mellon, et cetera. And loved it. I love solving the puzzle. I love having a clean sheet of paper and trying to figure it out. But somewhere in the middle there, I got an experience that influenced me and really was, as you said, sort of the catalyst. It was sort of a kernel at the time, and then a number of years later, I turned it into a coaching business. But I think it was between startup 5 and 6, my wife and daughter said, hey, do you need to do another one so soon? And I said, no, we did pretty well so far. So took some time off, did some consulting, and got brought into a company where the founder wanted to sell soon. He brought me in. I'm generally a sales marketing guy. So he said, look, I need you to make me look as big as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And so I went in, did that, put some processes in place, hired some people, did some things, helped him, and we worked together. And I think it was about 9, 10, 11 months later, he sold the business. He left, and I took it over, believe it or not. And the first day I took over as the general manager of this division of about a $100 million company at the time, our entire technical infrastructure collapsed on itself. And we were an email hosting company before Gmail and Office 365 were really a thing. And I had 60 employees, several thousand customers, and I lost about 1,000 of them, 1,000 of those customers in the first week, and had to spend months trying to figure out how to save the rest. And we had some pretty big partners. Ingram Micro is a partner of ours who many technology guys will know. A company called Endurance International, who recently bought Constant Contact for about $1 billion, was one of them. So that was a pretty big deal. And I said, okay, I got to figure out what to do here. And I had some really good CEOs that I worked with over the years and read a ton of books and sort of basically cobbled together my own little system and told the 4 or 5 guys I was working with who helped me run the division, said, look, here's the deal. I don't really know how to run a technical infrastructure. I've never run customer support before. I'm a pretty good sales and marketing guy, but I said, here's the direction I'd like us to go in, and here's sort of some goals I'd like us to reach, and I need each of you to draw the map from where we are today to there for your particular area, and we're going to help each other do it. And guess what? It worked.
Wow. Nice.
And looking back, so we doubled the business in about 2 years. I didn't lose one employee. We actually only had to hire about 5, 6, 7 others because we became so efficient in what we did. So it was really, all the resume stuff looked great. But the best part of it was when I left, two of these managers that I work with told me basically the same thing, was, I just want you to know the stuff that you made me do was really hard. I hated it, but I'm so glad you made me do it. And looking back, I was a coach. I didn't know it at the time, but so I wanted more of that. And so that's how I sort of started doing this about 4 or 5 years ago. And really, that journey, amongst many others, is what turned into a book for me. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that later. So that was my origin story.
Yeah, that I just love that because it was so neat. You went in and turned around a company and then ended up, did so much work, may as well continue on.
Yeah, it was just kind of fun. So it's certainly an enjoyable ride. So that's sort of how I got into what I'm doing today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's just get into digging in a little bit deeper into what some of your strategies for exceptional growth. Why do you think some companies survive, some flourish, and then some fail? And there's a different mix between what percentage, and you look at one source and it'll say this percentage of businesses will fail. But the point is, you see it on the front lines in your work. What do you find some of the similarities are when you see a company that will survive or will fail?
Sure. Well, according to some research that was done a few years ago, about 6,000 businesses across the world are started every single hour of every single day, wow, year after year. And about the same amount also go out of business every single hour, every single day. So the likelihood of you starting a business and having it just even survive is relatively low. It's depending on the stats you look at. I've seen stats from 75 to 96% of all businesses that fail within the first 10 years, and that's staggering. So yeah, the percentages of chance of you actually making it are so slim. And then those that actually do, most of them are actually just surviving. They're just trying to get by through effort, force of will, luck, in many cases. And that's because no one's really ever taught us how to run a business. We're trained in, finance or marketing or, engineering, but no one has really said, here's the way that you run a business as a leader. And there are a few out there. My favorite is Alan Mulally, who many folks know. A lot really don't. And to me, it's too bad because he's probably the best CEO we've had in 100 years. He turned around Boeing in the middle of 9/11. He turned around Ford in the middle of 2008. And not only did he turn them around, they were a mess going in, and they were better when they came out, which to me is just phenomenal. You get Steve Jobs and Sam Walton and all these wonderful names, Jeff Bezos. No one has done that I know of twice ever. And he just focuses on a few things, and that's really what happens, I think, when people. If you pick a good product, you pick a good market, and you really focus on it, have a good team, you just have to focus on a few things. And that's the ones that survive. Those that don't, the ones that die, usually it's through indigestion, not starvation. We try to do too many things. We get spread too thin. We're chasing revenue. And that's really a big problem. So those that die generally die from indigestion. Those that survive or through force of will, luck, as I said, just a lot of time and energy from yourself and a few people. And those that survive and flourish just do a few things really well, and they do them over and over and over again.
I really like that. Pulling out of those points is consistency, doing it over and over and over again, and almost not putting your head in the sand and just doing it rote by rote, but knowing that you've picked a good strategy and knowing it's going to lead to something and doing it over and over again, and not having quote unquote shiny object syndrome and going, oh, this didn't work the first time I tried it, so let's try this and this looks better. So that's a really, really big thing, and being focused and picking that one thing. So whatever industry that you're in, you could pick let's say a business development technique or a leadership technique, and there's always the flavor of the day. You can always say, I'm going to try this now and this the next month, but you got to give it time to work. And I think that's a really, really big piece. When you're working with clients or organizations, what is some of the things that you find that you will help these organizations realize that and then stick to the plan of this focus and consistently doing it?
Yeah, that's something I do a lot. I speak for Vistage and EO and a bunch of other places. I do some conferences and things. But when I speak to CEOs and I ask them sort of what their biggest barrier to growth is or what's getting in their way, it's almost always operational. Yeah. Meaning, my people aren't doing the right things. We're not hitting deadlines. We keep setting priorities, but we're not making them. That's all about execution. And execution is paramount, right? You can have a just decent strategy with excellent execution and beat someone who has an awesome strategy with poor execution. But I asked them sort of the question, which is, what are you executing on? And in the end, it's your strategy. You have some sort of strategy, whatever it is, and you're executing on it, and hopefully it's getting better, and you improve as you go, as you learn things. So I asked them this one question. I say, if we can agree that you're executing on your strategy, what would happen if I walked into your senior leadership team meeting this week and asked them all to write down, in their own words, your company's current strategy? And they read them all out loud. What would happen? And usually I get a laugh or a smile, and they say, well, they'll be all over the place. And I say, yeah. I said, so what's probably happening a lot is that they're executing really well on their version of the strategy. Your job as a leader is to get them all to coalesce and cohere on something that is that they all agree to, or align with. It may not be perfect, it may not be awesome, but at least you're all doing the same thing, and then that's the thing you can improve upon as you execute.
Yeah, that's really big, is having, we just talked about the word consistency in executing on that strategy, but then internally, because that was the external look. The internal look is, let's make sure that all of our players on our team are consistently speaking the same language, doing the same things while we execute on that strategy. And I think that's probably in a leadership or a sales force is one of the biggest problems, because you kind of picture people just running in 10 different directions thinking, well, I'm busy, I'm getting stuff done, but you're not. You're confusing people. And there's a great book I read over and over again by Donald Miller called Building a Story Brand. And one of the points in the book that he brings up applies here, which is, when you confuse, you lose. And that is in anything, our marketing message, our message to our teams. So what do you think that is a good way that you would recommend an organization to make sure everything is crystal clear and people are kind of walking in lockstep to make sure the brand is being represented the right way?
Yeah, there's two things that I would say I would answer to that question. One is, and I make all of my clients, my CEOs do this when they work with me, is I buy this great book by Cameron Harrell called Vivid Vision, and I hand it to them and I say, read this book and do what he says. Because one of the things that people want from their leaders is they want to know where we're going. And you need to write it down, and you need to share it. You make it so clear that everyone sees it as if it has already happened.
Yeah.
Then they at least know where they're going. It's never a straight path to where you're going. But at least if you're heading in that general direction, if you're trending towards that, then, and it's a good vision, then you're going to have a chance of being successful. It's not a guarantee, but at least you sort of aligned people on that path. And then the other thing that I do, which is much more practical, and I learned this from Vern Harnish, who's sort of known as the growth guy. He's been doing this kind of thing for 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it is now. He started EO and IPO, and he's written a bunch of books about it. And he says you have to get people on the same page. And he has this thing called the one-page plan. So literally, you create the page with your team, and you're all on it, and that's what you execute from, and that's what you look at, and that's how you live, that's your identity, that's your growth, that's where you're going. And you make sure that everyone in the company understands that page and how it was built, and that helps tremendously. As you said, most people are confused. They think they know what you mean, and you think they understand what's in your head, but they don't. You have to write it down, and you have to write it in such a clear way that they get it. That helps a lot. Those are the first two things I do with people. Write that vivid vision and then get them all on the same page, literally and figuratively.
And then I would also suspect, I've said this many times about a business plan or a marketing plan. Yay, as a team, we created this over the last 6 months, and here it is, and we all high-fived, and it's wonderful. And then they never do anything, they never readdress or look at it or re-engage with it. And I think with anything like this plan we're talking about, or the communications, I think that it needs to not just be a box that you check. It needs to be something that we're kind of picturing it like a plate spinning on a stick, and you got to come back and tap it once in a while and just make sure that we're all assessed and make sure that we're heading in the right direction still. So with that thought in mind, let's wrap up with this thought. Where would you recommend that an organization starts first to implement some of these things? Because I'm sure you could come in and give them a punch list of, here's my recommendations. Where are we going to start first?
Start first to get going. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. To make some change.
So that vision, I think, is the first thing. Is you write that thing down, share it with your team, make sure that they understand it, and if they're aligned with it or not. Because one of the things that happens is sometimes people just don't like where you're going, and that's perfectly fine. Then you should find a compassionate way to remove them from the organization, because they're not going to be happy if you're really going to do that forever and ever. So that's the first thing I always recommend. The second, and this sort of aligns with the other thing, the other next step is that they say team is a really important thing, and I all the research I've done over 30 years, team is more important than almost anything. According to some research that Marcus Buckingham did through ADP, about 80-some-odd% of people in every organization are on at least one team. And about 70% of those people are on more than one team. And many of those teams are not represented in the organization's structure, the org chart, if you will. So being able to, one, craft and build a great team, and then be able to manage a team really well, lead a team at any given time, is a skill that needs to be taught, because it's everywhere in your organization. And unless you're going to have to come in and save and rescue all the time, you want these people to be able to do that. I think Stanley McChrystal did a great job. He wrote a book called Team of Teams. And that's what he did. He created a team of teams, and he turned around JSOC, in these terrible wars that we're in over in the Middle East, because we were losing on a regular basis, and he focused on the teams first. That's typically what I have people focus on.
Perfect. I love it. In fact, that reminds me of this interview that I did with John Ruhlin, who's the author of Giftology, and he teaches how organizations need to use gifting as a strategic strategy. And okay, that's great, wonderful, love it, love it, love it. But he made an interesting comment. He said, yeah, but here's what I recommend companies do. Don't only focus on your external clients and gifting, because here's your inside organization, your employees, your teams that are looking at how wonderful you're treating their customers or prospects, but then they aren't treated the same way. So you need to be watching out for and treating your internal teams the same way, which is exactly what you were just saying. Hey, let's wrap up with your brand new book, Further Faster. Give us a little thumbnail sketch of what that is about, what readers can learn from that, and what's the best way they can pick up a copy.
Yeah, sure. So Further Faster, first book, it's out on March 17th, so Good Irish Boy out on St. Patty's Day, which is always fun. It's called The Vital Few Steps to Take the Guesswork Out of Growth. Most people are guessing, and there is a way to have you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to predict the future, 10 years out accurately. But if you spend time focusing on those few things, first, as I said, performance is a team sport. So you really need to make sure you understand that and focus on those team things. You also have to have some sort of coherent system, the thing I mentioned earlier in the when you said sort of my origin story. Execution and strategy are two sides of the same coin. They are connected inexorably, inextricably, and you need to understand that. And each feeds the other. And then lastly, you should focus on cash as your primary financial metric for growth, because growth sucks cash, and cash is your fuel. We focus too much on revenue. And I'm a 30-year sales guy, and I'm saying revenue doesn't matter. Revenue, as they say, is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. If you plan for building your company and knowing it will cost you money, and you figure out ways to get that money, you will make better decisions for the long term and grow your company. So that's what my book's about. It's sort of the 80-20 rule of business. I don't in any way say that this book gives you all the answers, but it gives you the first few things that you should do that probably gets you 70, 80, 90% of the way there. And then you can focus on the other stuff to fine-tune.
Wonderful. Well, Bill, thank you so much for coming on. Look forward to seeing the success of your book, Further Faster, The Vital Few Steps That Take the Guesswork Out of Growth. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.